morning, everybody.
Good morning. It's about 7:30 in the morning. We just passed through the Lions Bridge heading south, and we elected to take the ICW so we could make it south a little bit quicker rather than waiting 4 or 5 more days for weather. Wind's going to be coming out of south in a couple of days, and so we have to wait for that to abate before we can head further south. So we elected to take the ICW and motor for a few days. It'll save us about 4 days on the journey. This is a part of the ICW I've never been on before, so we're exploring. I think we're going to be in Daytona Beach tonight. It doesn't matter if
70 feet.
No, it doesn't matter if the bridge is 64, 70 feet. It's always terrifying. You go into these bridges even though you know you've got 4 feet and you look up and it looks like you're going to hit the bridge. And of course you should always just trust the signs on the side because they would never be wrong. So our friends up there encountered someone who had a log wrapped up around their anchor, and they wanted to know if we had something that would cut 6 to 8 inches. And so I pulled out the saw, a little crosscut saw, and they're up here at marker 91. We'll see if they need it. It's been uneventful. We're behind a cute little Canadian boat called Gypsy Wind. Weather's warming up. Yeah, we're doing about 7 knots with the current. And it's got Brett getting ready to rise, and we're due to be in Daytona Beach at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. Okay, just a minute ago we went through a shallow area. The lowest depth I saw was 7.5, 8 feet. A whole line of boats got too far over to the bank on the starboard side. They ran aground in there, and so everybody came to kind of a screeching halt. A bunch of people turned around and inched back the other way. But the bottom line was they didn't stay in the middle of the channel. This is a problem of playing follow the leader, is that the person in front doesn't necessarily know what he's doing. However, it does mean that if something goes wrong, it happens to them before it happens to you. All we did was move over more towards the center of the channel and work our way through it slowly, and everything was fine. The boat in front of us, Gypsy Wind, they also made it through just fine, but I think they have a pretty shallow draft. We're back on track, and we're heading down the middle.
I'm starting to knit a hat, so I have a pattern for it here. And it said to cast on 76 stitches, and I can increase it by amounts of 4 if I remember correctly. and keep the pattern going. I think it's 7. I think I have to add 7 stitches each time to make the pattern bigger. But I'm doing magic loop. So that means that I'm going to attach these 2 parts together. But usually when I attach the 2 parts together the first couple times, I usually make a Mobius strip, which is not the way you're supposed to do it.
No, you flip it backwards.
Yes. So we'll see. It's going to take me a few minutes here, and we'll see if I get it right the first time or how many times I have to restart this project.
Well, so far we've seen some beautiful shoreline and some beautiful homes with beautiful docks and lots of birds sitting on the docks this morning. Lots of pelicans seen this morning. But I like the shoreline sometimes on the islands.
Right over here. There's really nothing wrong with taking the ditch versus going offshore. There's a lot of people like, I don't want to take the ditch, I don't want to take the ditch, or I only go offshore. Well, that's fine if you've got a 7 or 8 foot draft boat and it's really only good for offshore, that's fine. But we have a shoal draft boat, so we can motor down the ICW if we want. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Don't let anybody tell you that there's something wrong with taking the ditch. There's nothing wrong with taking the ditch, especially when it's safety that's involved, right? If the weather's not right offshore, don't do it. Either wait in port, relax, or go down the ditch. It really doesn't matter. The other thing about offshore, and one of the reasons we tend to like offshore more than taking the ICW, is that we can spend 40 hours, 30 hours offshore, get where we're going to go, and then sit there and enjoy the town or enjoy the anchorage, have fun. When you take the ICW, it's 8 hours a day, anchor, 8 hours a day, anchor, 8 hours a day, anchor, and you never really get a chance to do anything other than enjoy the scenery. And of course, it's a noisy motor the entire time, and it costs money for fuel, and there's lots of other boats, and there's traffic. It's actually more tiring to take the ICW than it is to go offshore in a lot of ways, because you have to be at the wheel every single second. You have to be steering every single second. You can't take a break for anything. In fact, today, we got off course for, I don't know, 20 seconds, and we were almost in somebody's backyard. So we're about 2 hours out of Daytona. We're making about 6.5 knots. It's been a pleasant, uneventful day. It's nice and warm out. You can see I took my sweater off. Breeze is still cool, but the sun is really nice and warm. We just went through LB Knox Bridge. They were very nice. It's an on-demand bridge. Should be a straight shot from here to Daytona. And then we're gonna get fuel and water and go anchor. We're about a half hour out of Halifax Marina in Daytona Beach. We're just kind of getting ready. We're gonna take on fuel and water and pump out and all that kind of business. We didn't do it in the last place and we're kind of remiss about that, but we're definitely gonna get fuel and water here, top everything off. This is really shallow out here, by the way. like 2 to 3 feet all the way to shore. There's a narrow channel that they've dredged right in the middle of this, and that's it. So you can't get off course here. I don't know that I would try this particular area at night, because the markers are so far off and you have to maintain a really good heading. You could do it with, you know, the chart plotter, I suppose, if you trust it explicitly. But in the middle of this channel, we're at about 15 feet of water.
Now,
Morning everybody, it's 6:30 in the morning. We're underway from Daytona. I don't know how far we'll get, but we're trying to get 60 miles today. We'll see what happens. Weather's a lot warmer. It's kind of foggy. It's kind of cool looking outside. We're back in shorts again. We weren't freezing last night. It was wonderful. We could open up the hatch and have just the sheets. We are getting a little bit farther south. We talked to several of our friends on the phone. Hopefully some people that we're going to link up with in Fort Pierce, maybe West Palm, just to say hi as we head along our way. We were about a half mile down from the little inlet that goes to Halifax Harbor, where there were a bunch of other boats anchored. And Hannah had told me there was a better anchorage just a couple miles down the ICW, and that's it. And the depths are better, it's larger, it is in fact a better anchorage. So if you're coming down this way, there's a better anchorage just a couple miles past Halifax. We're just passing Pelican Island, and there's pelicans everywhere, flying low over the water. You can see their reflection as they fly over the water, and there's a huge mass of them out there. I don't think I've ever seen that many pelicans all together at once. But it's interesting to watch the reflection of the birds as they go low over the water. This is Ponce de Leon Inlet, cute little town. We're following bob tracks. This is apparently a shoaly area, and so we've got a very narrow track that we have to follow to get through. There's a really cool lighthouse here in the fog, and we're having breakfast. So this is the NASA Causeway Bridge that's coming up. They're doing a lot of construction here, and they have to guide us through with a tugboat. We've been listening to them on the radio. They've been guiding other people through different sections as they're working on it. There's barges and cranes everywhere. So we're waiting on this black and white tug to guide us through. One of the nice things about taking the ICW is that you can stop almost anywhere you want. There's anchorages all over the place. So you get tired, you pull into a nice quiet little anchorage like where we're at now, and you can drop the hook when you're tired. It's like pulling over to the side of the road at a rest stop, and there's plenty of them all up and down. So you have many choices of where you can stop. That's kind of nice. And you can stop early enough in the afternoon. We typically stop at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That gives us time to anchor before everybody else is trying to anchor. It gives us a chance to make dinner and relax a little bit, and then we can get up early in the morning, right at daybreak, to leave. So we want to be the first ones out of the anchorage and the first ones into the anchorage. That's kind of what we want to try and do. It's really awful to try and come into an anchorage late at night that's already filled with boats because you waited too long. So round about noon, Hannah will start looking for an anchorage. At 3 o'clock, we'll pull into the anchorage. If that anchorage doesn't work, we have 2 more ahead of us that we've already planned out that we can get into before sunset. We're in Cocoa. We just anchored, just south of Cocoa actually. We're on the ocean side of the channel in about 10 feet of water. This area, you could anchor just about anywhere. The holding seems really good. It grabbed really well. So we're going to spend the night here and have some dinner and then head towards Fort Pierce tomorrow. Watching the sunrise, trying to get a time lapse of it, and the sun is just starting to come up. We can see it was pretty foggy for the first little way. Our friends that are traveling with us have radar, so we were kind of following the radar, making sure that we could see the Atons as they were going by. So, but it's light now, and we're en route, and we're hoping to make Fort Pierce by late this afternoon. I've been reading a book this morning, just started it. We picked it up here a few days ago, and this is an excellent book. I'm going to have a lot of fun. I'm only into it about 2 chapters, but this is a really cool book. Hey everybody, we're just getting into North Fort Pierce right now. It's 2:12. We've made good time, and the bridge is going to open at 2:30. That's the last Bascule Bridge, and then we're going to find a place to anchor somewhere in Pierce. A lot of these little islands out here are really cool, and they've got beaches on them, and people are out there with kayaks and tents, and sometimes even a pontoon boat pulled up on the beach. A lot of boaters out today having a good time. Yep. Good morning, everybody. We are leaving Fort Pierce and we're just motoring out. We're gonna go 24 hours to Miami, and then when we get to Miami, we're gonna decide whether we're gonna continue another 24 hours straight to Boot Key or whether we're gonna stay the night there in Miami. The winds are supposed to pick up and they're a little bit better than they were yesterday. So we should have 15 to 20 knot winds the whole way there. They're going to pick up to 25, maybe gusting to 30 as we get in the vicinity of Miami. And the question is whether they're going to be too much and we want to wait for a day, or whether we want to just continue on. They're going to get lighter as we go farther south. So depending on how far south we get, the winds are supposed to lighten up. So we're going out the inlet now. It is slack tide. Actually, it's just starting to come in. So we've only got about 0.2 knots of current right now. There's no big waves. It's in the daylight. This is the way is much better to do it. Slack tide. So something about offshore heading south along the Florida coast, you have to pay attention to the Gulf Stream. There are places along the Florida coast where the Gulf Stream might only be a mile from the coast. And you'll notice immediately that the water temperature changes and that you lose a knot or two or three and you've got it turned back in. So many places you have to stay just, a half mile or a mile offshore all the way down, and that's really not offshore.
We're currently planning to be just outside of Miami by about 2 a.m.-ish, about 10 hours away. We will likely just be keeping on going and then going for about another day or so anchoring in Rodriguez Key. After that, it's about a day trip down to Marathon and Boot Key.
Good evening, everybody. We're about West Palm Beach now. It's about 6 o'clock in the evening. The winds have started to pick up, so that's good. We're at about 13 knots of wind. We're making 5.1 through the water, and we're running jib and jigger. It's nighttime. We had this big debate as to whether to put the main up double reef for the evening or whether to leave it down. And if we're making 5.1 knots with it down, the wind is supposed to pick up to 15 to 20. So we'll be just fine with the jetty. We're going to be going, 6 knots before the night is over, and that's plenty for nighttime. But it is a beautiful night. I mean, the temperature's good. The sky and the sunset are beautiful. The waves are mellow. We are in the Gulf Stream, though, and that's something to talk about. We're about 3 miles offshore now, maybe 4. Let me see exactly. We are 2.58 miles offshore, and the Gulf Stream is giving us about 0.7 knots of counter current against us. So we're losing a little bit of speed to the current, and the north wind is stacking the waves up a little bit, but not too bad. We've got about 2-3 foot waves right now on about a 6-second period. They're a little short. We will probably be at Miami in the morning, and then we will continue on to Rodriguez Key and then on to Boot Key. But the whole trip's about a 48-hour trip, and we'll probably just try and go there direct. Good evening. It's 10 o'clock at night, and the bearing on our drive shaft has been making a little bit more noise than I want it to, and it's kind of been on my list of things to do. But transmissions have different requirements. Some boats, you can't leave the transmission going when the engine's not running. It requires a different type of lubrication and pressurized system. And our transmission, on the other hand, It does not hurt the transmission to be in neutral and spinning. So it just makes noise when it does. However, the drive shaft goes through a bearing before it goes out the back, called a carrier bearing. And that carrier bearing has been rusty. It's old. Anyway, I've kept it greased. It's a greasy mess right now, but it's making a little bit more noise than I want, so I'm going to grease it again. That's what we're doing. The bearing we're talking about is right there. And if you can see on top, there's a little grease fitting. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit with a rag, and I'm going to put a grease fitting on it. There, I put the grease fitting on top of it. I've wiped up some of the grease, and I'm going to put some more grease in. You can see some of it starting to come out. Go ahead and put it in neutral. If you're in the yard, out of the water, and you grease that, then you have to turn it by hand. It's a pain in the butt. And if you're in the water, let's say, and you're stopped at anchor and you have to put the engine in gear, well then if you get something caught in the drive shaft, it could really hurt you because there's a lot of force behind it. However, when you're just going through the water and you put it in neutral, the water will turn the prop gently enough that you can stop the shaft with your hand. So it spins around nicely, it spreads the grease around in the bearing nicely. You don't have to turn it by hand. You don't have to worry about getting your hands caught in it. And so it's actually the best time to do this. So I suppose I could have done it in the day instead of the night, but we're on 4-hour shifts and I'm wide awake. So that was why. We're reading after 50,000 miles. It's interesting. A lot of the things that we're already doing and a lot of the things that we're trying to do and haven't gotten around to yet. And there's also some very cool things that are not available anymore, which are kind of a shame that I would love to have. Like an Aldous signaling lamp. It's a giant white lamp that you can use to do Morse code with.
I'm sure you could find it somewhere.
Anyway, be interesting. We're reading a section right now that's about how to organize and stow things and keep lists of everything that you have. There's sections on how to deal with cockroaches. There's sections on how to jibe the mainsail when you're poled out with the Genoa on wing and wing, which incidentally is something that we had already devised. And he just has a very simple way of making one circuit around the deck to do everything during that process when you're single-handing. And I hadn't thought about doing it that way with one single process. But once again, this is After 50,000 Miles by Hal Roth. It's a wonderful book. It's a little dated, but not too bad. Well, that was exciting. We're approaching Miami, and we were a little farther offshore, and the winds picked up. There's a small craft advisory out for gusts up to 35 knots. We saw 30-knot winds. Tried to turn into shore, and that put me on a beam reach. And it was pretty exciting for about 15 or 20 minutes. Now that we're just a mile offshore, the winds have mellowed out. We're back down to 17 knots, and everything is just fine. Morning, everybody. Sunrise. It is 6:19 in the morning. It was a little exciting a little bit ago. There's a small craft advisory for 25 gust 39 and 6 to 35 and 6 to 9 foot waves. We were about 3 miles offshore, and the winds picked up to 25 knots, so I saw some gusts over 30. We were making 9.5 knots, jib and jigger, but it got a little bit too much, and so I decided to turn inland, and that put us on a beam reach in 25 knot winds. That was exciting. So we put the rails in the water, and I ran for about 15 minutes, and we got closer to land. We're a mile out, and the winds eased up, and the waves eased up, and now we're at 15 gusts 19. We're doing about 6 knots. Everything is fine, and we're on our way to Rodriguez Key. We're going to bypass Miami. We're going to head for the Hawk Channel. I watched him coming from our port side for quite a while, and it looked like he wasn't moving, and I was like, we're on a collision course. But as we got closer, I could see that he was going a little bit faster than us, and he was going to make it in front of us. That's how you can tell if somebody's on a collision course with you, is if they don't move and you don't move. The relative position of the two things are the same, they're going to run into each other. So we are almost crossing the inlet now. When I look out towards the horizon, I can see the bigger waves crossing the horizon. There's definitely some 6 to 9 footers out there, just like it says. So out in the Gulf Stream, today is not a good day to be playing. Morning, Sam. I guess we're doing 6-hour shifts. You did 6, I did 6, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning again. I guess we're doing 6 hours. It's a beautiful sunrise, by the way. We're doing whatever makes sense hours?
Yeah. During the day, there's no shift. At night when you take shifts.
Winds are 22 knots. We're running jib and jigger.
Good morning. We're having a nice quiet morning in the Hawks Channel, and so we're protected, so I thought I would cook. So I'm making eggs and toast with bread that I made just before the trip and some farm fresh eggs that we picked up along the way in St. Mary's. So I got plenty of those, and I'm gonna put some cheese on it to make it special, and probably get open up some blackberry jam, homemade blackberry jam or something like that. Something nice.
Say hi, Sam.
I noticed the wind had picked up to about 24 knots consistently. We were headed 7-5. We don't need to make the ride more uncomfortable. So I reefed the sails, and we're kind of hitting 7, but we've got a half knot current getting us there a little quicker.
Hey guys, so the wind has shifted. Well, actually the wind didn't shift, but we turned more into the wind. Wind is 17 knots, we're under full sail. I'm making 8.4 knots. We've had rails in the water. It's kind of fun. So this is a real nice sail. After just being a head sail for all day and all night, it's nice to have the main out again. Hannah came out on the deck and helped me put up the mainsail. Sam's off shift, so he's sleeping. So the sails are down. We're about 12 miles outside of Marathon, and the winds died. I mean, they're like 7 knots, 6 knots. And so we started motoring again. We're gonna anchor outside. We have some friends that are ahead of us, and they told us that it is very full in the anchorage, and there are no balls available, there are no anchorage spots available. They found one spot, but it's too tight. They're not happy with it, but they're tired, so they're going to bed. But they said, don't try it, wait till morning, and then go in and see if you can find a spot. So we're gonna anchor outside the inlet, in the lee side of the shore up here, and we'll sleep the night and we'll deal with this in the morning. I think we're probably gonna be there at about 8 o'clock, and that was kind of what I figured was gonna happen. We took a little bit of a break to go ahead and put the sails down before night. It's always easier to do stuff in the daylight than at nighttime.
Evening.
Good evening.
We made it.
Yep.
We're here.
33 hours, Fort Pierce to Boot Key. We had to anchor outside because it was dark.
There's a lot of boats anchored out here. I'm a little nervous for tomorrow. I'd really like to find a spot inside.
There's like 15 boats out here. Not all of them are lit.
We found that out.
And there's a lot of masts inside, it looks like.
Yeah. So our friends went in while it was still daylight, and they found a spot, but they don't like the spot. We'll go in tomorrow and see if we can find a spot.
Mm-hmm.
Hannah made pasta, and so the last hour or two while we were motoring, we were cooking. Hannah was cooking. And so
It's okay.
it came out of the oven just as we were ready to anchor, which was just perfect.
Coming up on the dredge.
Anyway, we'll all be cut out. We'll all be cut out.
Just for that, I'm putting that on the...
You can never have too many stitch markers. They're very important. You didn't talk about me risking my life.
Offshore is a patience thing. You wait for the right weather window, you go where you're gonna go, and when the weather's bad, you turn in. There's no reason to stay out in bad weather.